Hi, and welcome back to the Lil Will Learning Company. And today we're going to be talking about the amazing Western novel, Shane by Jack Schaefer. Now, when most people read Shane or think about Shane, they think about the guns, the violence, the whole bar fight, saloon fight, and it's a really great novel with just those. But the novel is really teaching about other things as well. It's not just about the guns and the violence in the Western setting. What it really is about is who is the type of man that you choose to be when you are capable of violence. And we're going to look at the novel today through four quotes that show us how power, restraint, and character actually work. Now, to give quick little summary backstory, Shane revolves around this character named Shane. He's a mysterious man who comes into this very small town of homesteaders, and he's taken in by the Starrett family, who is Joe, the father, Marion, the mother, and then their son, Bob. Joe tells to Marion, it's not what a man knows is not important. It's what he is that counts. And the quote comes about because Marion points out to Joe, is like, hey, this Shane guy doesn't know anything about farming. Why are you hiring him? And he's saying it's he doesn't really care. He has a gut sense about Shane that he's a man of high character, that basically even if he doesn't know farming, it's not really a big deal. And what's behind that is this idea that Joe understands that skills can be taught, skills can be transferred, but who you are as a person, your character, you can't fake that. Or at the very least, it's very hard to hide that. And there's something about Shane's character that he instinctively trusts very early on in the novel. And what that sets in the story is before all the conflicts later on, before the guns and the violence later on, characters are a really important part of the story. And Shane's character speaks through. And by the way, Joe Starrett himself is a man of very high character. Throughout the novel, the people in the town, all the other homesteaders always go to him for questions and reassurance and guidance. So he's a high character person as well. And he's placing his trust in Shane. And that's also important because it's not that he just trusts Shane. He is hiring Shane and has Shane live with them on their farm. He trusts Shane enough to be near his family, even though they don't really know Shane's past. Another thing through the novel is Shane's past is kept mysterious. You never really learn where exactly he came from and what exactly he did. They give little hints here and there, but it's meant to be mysterious. Now, there's a quote a little bit later on in the novel where Shane is speaking to Bob specifically. So they had kind of found out that Shane has this revolver, this gun on him that he kind of keeps stored away. And Bob eventually realizes that Shane's very talented with a gun. And as he's explaining how to shoot a gun, how to hold it, how to fire it, and all these details, he gives Bob this particular quote, which is very important to the novel. It's not really just about guns, it's about later on people in general. And it goes like this. Listen, Bob, a gun is just a tool, no better and no worse than any other tool, a shovel, or an axe, or a saddle, or a stove, or anything. Think of it always that way. A gun is as good and as bad as the man who carries it. Remember that. Now, this is one of the most important lines in the book, and it's spoken directly to Bob, but what it basically emphasizes this, Shane's not saying to Bob that violence is something to be glorified. He's saying, look, this is a tool, and depending on whose hands it's in, it is used simply as a tool. So yes, a gun is capable of violence, but if it's in a good man's hand, it's used only in very specific situations. And of course, if it's in a bad man's hands, then it can be used for great violence as well. And the point is that power isn't really a moral good or a moral bad, but really it's the people themselves who have the moral good or the moral bad. Are they a morally good person or are they a morally bad person? And if they're a morally good person, no matter what tool you put into their hands, it will be used for good. But if they're a morally bad person, no matter what tools you put into their hands, it will be used for bad reasons. Now, throughout the novel, even though it becomes very apparent that Shane is capable of tremendous strength, but also violence as well. It doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad person. It's just he's capable of these things. And he really does try to restrain himself. It's why he ends up doing all these chores on the Starrett family farm, where it's digging out a tree stump or helping with the barn and the animals and things like that. He does these everyday things. It's clear he's trying to leave behind a past where he's done tremendous violence before, and he's still capable of doing so. Uh, that restraint, though, is a part of his strength because he is very capable of all this strength and violence, and yet he's choosing not to act upon that. He's choosing not to have that be part of his life. But without ruining the story, there's events that happen in the novel where he decides he has to do something because he's one of the few people in the town who is actually capable of standing up to the people who are kind of ruining the homesteaders' lives and who are bringing violence upon them. And he comes to a decision a little bit later on. I'm kind of jumping much further ahead into the novel, but he comes to this decision, and here's his third quote here. This comes from Bob, by the way. As I watched, he stretched his arms up, the fingers reaching to their utmost limits, grasping and grasping, it seemed, at the glory glowing in the sky. So at this point, this is Bob looking at Shane, who's basically coming to a decision, a decision he does not take very lightly. And Shane has shown throughout the novel, he's not eager to have violence in his life anymore. In fact, he's been trying to leave that life behind. And yet, even though he's trying to, he's making a decision right now, essentially to help the homesteaders end this violence once and for all, but it means he's the one who will take on that burden. Even though he wants a life without violence, even though he wants a life of calm and peace and easiness, he has made this decision to help out. And it means he's kind of, in a way, saying goodbye to the life he's been trying to build for himself. It's really, really sad. And the reason why is he understands that if he's not the one who goes and takes on this responsibility, then it's going to have to be Joe Starrett who does it, because all the homesteaders looked up to Joe. And he's basically telling Joe, no, you need to stay back, let me handle this, because if Joe goes, there's a good chance that Joe is killed. And Joe's a good man, he has a wife, he has a son. Whereas if Shane goes, Shane has a chance to actually carry through with it and end it, but it means giving up the life that he wants, a life very similar to almost what Joe has. So then Shane does go, and he has this final, let's just say, gunfight with one of the other main protagonists. And I don't want to ruin it because it's a great novel. Everyone should read it. But it does show the cost of violence in his life and really in everyone's life in general. And the quote is like this: "A man is what he is, Bob, and there's no breaking the mold. I tried that, and I've lost." Now, at the end there, Shane does win this fight in terms of like literally a physical fight, a gunfight, but what he kind of loses is his opportunity at this life where he leaves that violence behind, and he loses the future he was striving for. And it ultimately leads to him having to leave this town, leave the Starretts, and try to find a life elsewhere, because there's really no coming back from what he's done to these antagonizers in this town. And it's not like this moment of triumph and glory. It's a bit of resignation. So even though he was a man that was perfectly capable of all this violence, and he did want to leave it behind, he still used it this one more time to help some other people out. And even though he lost his future, he did help others. It's this real sad resignation on his part. He really wanted to believe that he could outgrow his past, but it was just called upon him this one more time to enact. Basically, it's the book and Jack Schaefer kind of saying, sometimes it's really hard to leave behind your past like that. And even though he does it for a very good cause, it's still painful to actually piece together. There's no celebration. It's just him accepting the consequence of his actions, both the good in that he's helped all these people, but the bad in the sense that he's never really fully escaped his past, and the future he wants is just that much further away. So ultimately, the novel Shane and the author Jack Schaefer kind of asks us, it's not whether or not there is violence in the world or not violence. The question is, who should carry the burden of that violence? And what's the cost of it? And that's a really difficult question. Shane is someone who is trying to leave his violent past behind. He has tremendous restraint through the novel until there just comes this one situation where he can't really hold it back or hide it anymore. It's really, he's the only person in this situation who can really do something. And even though he does help others, he still does pay a personal cost for that violence. And even though he does have to resort to violence, he's still a man of character. Joe Starrett is a man of character. Bob, the young son who sees all this, sees the restraint, sees the character, and sees violence used in only the most difficult and needing of situations, and really a situation where it saved his father's life. And there's a sacrifice to that as well. When we call upon certain people to take upon that violence, there's a sacrifice that we're also asking them to take on as well. And Shane took that on in the story, and there's a consequence to that. I highly recommend you read Shane. It's a wonderful novel. It's really, really good. It's not too long of a read either. It's one of the best westerns out there. Well, I hope you like this summary of the themes of Shane. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, y'all. Take care.